I never believed in curses until I worked at that castle. My name is Harriet Blackwood, and I am, or rather was, the royal astronomer at Thornhaven Castle. It's a position that has been in my family for generations, a legacy I was proud to uphold. But now, as I sit in my dimly lit chamber, quill trembling in my hand, I wonder if I should have declined the honor when it was bestowed upon me. The night everything changed was deceptively ordinary. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and aged stone that I'd grown accustomed to over the years. I climbed the winding stairs of the astronomy tower, my footsteps echoing in the silence. The brass telescope, a family heirloom passed down through generations of Blackwoods, waited for me at the top, its lens glinting in the moonlight that streamed through the narrow windows. I remember thinking how peaceful it was, how removed from the politics and intrigues of the court below. If only I had known then how wrong I was. As I settled into my routine, adjusting the telescope and consulting my charts, a chill ran down my spine. Something felt off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but there was a wrongness in the air, as if the very stars were holding their breath. And then I saw it. Or rather, I didn't see it. The star was gone. Now, you must understand, stars don't simply vanish. They might explode in supernovas or slowly fade over millennia, but they don't disappear in the blink of an eye. Especially not Astria's Eye, the brightest star in our sky and a cornerstone of navigation for our kingdom's navy. I checked and double-checked my calculations, my heart racing. Had I made a mistake? Was the telescope malfunctioning? But deep down, I knew. Something impossible had happened, and I was the only one who knew. As I stared into the void where Astria's Eye should have been, a thought struck me. This particular window in the astronomy tower had always been different. It was set at an odd angle, and the stone around it was newer than the rest of the tower. I had always assumed it was due to some past renovation, but now, with trembling hands, I pulled out the ancient floor plans of the castle that I had inherited along with my position. As I unrolled the yellowed parchment, my candle guttered, casting dancing shadows across the walls. For a moment, I could have sworn I saw a figure in those shadows watching me. But when I turned, there was nothing there. Forcing myself to focus, I pored over the plans, and there it was. A detail so small I had missed it before. The window wasn't just oddly placed, it had been specifically designed to observe a particular point in the sky. A point that, until tonight, had always been occupied by Astria's Eye. But why? Why would someone go to such lengths to observe a single star? And more importantly, what did its disappearance mean? As these questions swirled in my mind, a knock at the door made me jump. I hastily rolled up the plans, shoving them into a drawer. "Come in," I called, trying to keep my voice steady. The door creaked open, revealing the lined face of Giles, the castle steward. His expression was grave, his eyes darting nervously around the room. "Apologies for the late intrusion, Lady Blackwood," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But His Majesty requests your immediate presence in the throne room." I felt the blood drain from my face. In all my years as royal astronomer, I had never been summoned to the throne room, let alone in the middle of the night. "Did His Majesty say why?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice level. Giles shook his head. "No, my lady." "But—" He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if afraid of being overheard. "There are whispers in the castle. Dark omens. Some say the old prophecy is coming to pass." I wanted to scoff at such superstition, but the memory of the vanished star held my tongue. Instead, I nodded, gathering my cloak around me. As I followed Giles down the torchlit corridors, my mind raced. What prophecy was he talking about? And how could it possibly be connected to a missing star? We reached the massive oak doors of the throne room. 2 guards stood at attention, their faces impassive beneath their helmets. But as they opened the doors for us, I caught a flicker of— was it fear in their eyes? The throne room stretched before us, cavernous and cold. At the far end, bathed in the light of 100 candles, sat King Edmund. Even from this distance, I could see the tension in his posture, the way his fingers gripped the arms of his throne. And there, at his right hand, stood a figure I had never seen before. Tall and gaunt, clothed in robes as black as the night sky, with eyes that seemed to pierce right through me. As I approached the throne, my footsteps echoing in the vast chamber, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into something far larger and more dangerous than a simple astronomical anomaly. If I had known then what that missing star truly meant, what secrets it would uncover, I would have turned and fled the castle that very night. But ignorance propelled me forward, into a web of ancient secrets and royal intrigue that would change not just my life, but the fate of the entire kingdom. Little did I know, as I knelt before the king, that this was only the beginning. The stars were aligning, but not in the way any of us could have predicted, and somewhere, in the depths of the castle, a clock began to tick, counting down to a revelation that would shake the very foundations of our world. This concludes part 1 of the story. It introduces the protagonist, Harriet Blackwood, and sets up the central mystery of the vanishing star. We've established the setting of Thornhaven Castle and introduced elements of intrigue with the oddly placed window, the ancient floor plans, and the mysterious summons from the king. The part ends on a cliffhanger, with Harriet about to face the king and an unknown figure, hinting at deeper mysteries and potential danger to come. The throne room felt colder than the night air outside, a chill that seemed to emanate from the stone walls themselves. As I approached the dais, I could feel the weight of unseen eyes upon me. The court might have been dismissed for the night, but in Thornhaven Castle, secrets had a way of growing ears and finding voices in the shadows. King Edmund's face was a mask of regal composure, but I had known him since we were children. I could see the tightness around his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands as they gripped the golden arms of the throne. Whatever had prompted this midnight summons, it had shaken him to his core. "Lady Blackwood," he said, his voice echoing in the cavernous chamber. "I trust you know why you've been called here." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Did he somehow know about the vanished star already? But how could he? I had only discovered it moments ago. "I'm afraid I don't, Your Majesty," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. The king's eyes flicked to the figure beside him, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Up close, the stranger was even more unsettling. His skin was pale as moonlight, his eyes so dark they seemed to absorb the candlelight rather than reflect it. When he spoke, his voice was like dry leaves rustling in the wind. "She doesn't know, my liege," he said. "The signs are clear, but she has not yet understood their meaning." I bristled at his words. Who was this man to speak for me? But before I could voice my indignation, the king raised a hand. "Lady Blackwood, allow me to introduce Lord Erebus. He is an advisor of sorts, one who deals in matters beyond the ordinary realm of court politics." The way he hesitated before the word advisor set alarm bells ringing in my head. I had never heard of this Lord Erebus, and in a court as gossip-hungry as ours, that was highly unusual. "Your Majesty," I said carefully, "if I may ask, what exactly are these signs Lord Erebus speaks of?" The king and Erebus exchanged a look that I couldn't decipher. It was the king who finally spoke. "Harriet," he said, using my given name for the first time in years, "what do you know of the Stellar Concordance?" I frowned. The Stellar Concordance was an ancient text, part astronomy treatise, part prophetic nonsense. It was kept under lock and key in the Royal Library, and I had only been allowed to study select passages related to celestial navigation. "It's a historical document, Your Majesty," I replied. "Interesting from an astronomical perspective, but much of it is Well, superstition. Lord Erebus made a sound that might have been a laugh, if laughter could curdle milk. Superstition, she says. Tell me, Lady Blackwood, do you consider the disappearance of Astria's eye to be mere superstition as well? I felt as if the floor had dropped out from under me. How could he possibly know? The king leaned forward, his eyes boring into mine. Is it true, Harriet? Has the star vanished? I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. Yes, Your Majesty. I discovered it just before I was summoned here, but I don't understand how. The how is not important, Erebus cut in. What matters is the why, and more crucially, what comes next. He turned to a side table, where an ancient tome lay open. Its pages were yellow with age, covered in spidery writing and complex diagrams. With a bony finger, he traced a line of text. When the eye of the guardian closes, he read aloud, the veil shall thin, and that which was hidden shall be revealed. This, Your Majesty, is but the first step. The prophecy is unfolding before our very eyes. I wanted to scoff, to dismiss it all as nonsense. But the memory of that empty patch of sky where Astria's eye should have been kept me silent. The king rose from his throne, descending the steps until he stood before me. Up close, I could see the dark circles under his eyes, the lines of worry etched deep into his face. Harriet, he said softly, I need you to work with Lord Erebus. Study the concordance, track the stars. Whatever is coming, we must be prepared. I opened my mouth to protest, but the look in his eyes stopped me. This wasn't just my king giving me an order. This was Edmund, my childhood friend, asking for my help. Of course, Your Majesty, I said, bowing my head. I'll do whatever I can. As I turned to leave, Lord Erebus's voice stopped me. One more thing, Lady Blackwood. The window in your tower, the one that pointed to Astria's eye. I trust you've noticed its uniqueness? I nodded, a chill running through me. Yes, I had just discovered that tonight. His lips curved in what might have been a smile, but looked more like a grimace. Good. Then you're already on the right path. But be warned, some secrets are buried for a reason. Tread carefully. With that cryptic warning ringing in my ears, I left the throne room. The corridors seemed darker now, the shadows deeper and more menacing. As I climbed the stairs back to my tower, my mind whirled with questions. What did the disappearance of Astria's eye truly mean? What secrets were hidden behind that peculiar window? And most troublingly, what wasn't King Edmund telling me? I pushed open the door to my chamber, only to stop short. Someone had been here. My papers were disturbed, books moved ever so slightly out of place. To anyone else, it might have seemed like nothing, but I knew my own organized chaos. Heart pounding, I rushed to the drawer where I had hidden the castle plans. They were still there, but as I unrolled them, my blood ran cold. There, in the corner of the parchment, was a symbol I had never seen before. A spiral of stars, with a single eye at its center. As I stared at the mark, a gust of wind blew through the room, extinguishing my candles. In the sudden darkness, I could have sworn I heard a whisper, as faint as a dying breath. The stars are watching Harriet Blackwood, and they remember. I stood there, frozen, as the moonlight cast eerie shadows across my chamber. Whatever I had stumbled into, there was no turning back now. The vanishing star was just the beginning, and I had a sinking feeling that uncovering the truth might cost me everything. Little did I know, as I relit my candles with shaking hands, that the real danger was yet to come. For in Thornhaven Castle, some secrets are better left in the dark. This concludes part 2 of the story. We've expanded on the setting, introducing more of the castle's ominous atmosphere and the sense of hidden dangers. We've also introduced 2 key characters: King Edmund, an old friend of Harriet's who is now caught up in something beyond his understanding, and the mysterious Lord Erebus, who seems to know more than he's letting on. The plot has thickened with the introduction of the Stellar Concordance and its prophecy, as well as the hint that someone has been in Harriet's chambers, leaving a mysterious symbol behind. This sets up several questions and potential conflicts for the upcoming parts. The following days passed in a blur of dusty tomes and sleepless nights. Lord Erebus had granted me unprecedented access to the Stellar Concordance, and I found myself poring over its cryptic pages for hours on end. The more I read, the more unsettled I became. The Concordance spoke of cosmic alignments, of gates between worlds, and of guardians who kept watch from the heavens. It was the stuff of fairy tales and fireside stories, yet the disappearance of Astria's eye lent an unsettling weight to these ancient words. One evening, as I was cross-referencing a particularly obscure passage, a knock at my chamber door startled me from my reverie. I opened it to find Giles, the castle steward, his lined face even more careworn than usual. "My lady," he said in a hushed tone, "there's something you need to see." Curiosity piqued, I followed him through the twisting corridors of the castle. As we descended into areas I had rarely visited, the air grew colder, heavy with the scent of damp stone and secrets long buried. "Giles, where are we going?" I asked, my voice echoing in the narrow passageway. He glanced back, his eyes reflecting the flickering torchlight. "To the heart of it all, my lady, to where it began." We came to a stop before an ancient door, its wood black with age and etched with symbols that matched those in the concordance. Giles produced a key that looked as old as the door itself, and with a groan of protesting hinges, it swung open. The chamber beyond took my breath away. It was a perfect replica of the night sky, stars and constellations painted on the domed ceiling with such precision that for a moment I thought we were outdoors. But it was the center of the room that truly captured my attention. There, on a raised dais, stood a device I had never seen before. It was like a telescope, but far more complex, with rings of brass and silver interlocking in impossible patterns. And at its heart, pulsing with a faint blue light, was a crystal that seemed to contain a universe of its own. "What is this place?" I breathed, unable to tear my eyes away from the mesmerizing crystal. "This, my lady, is the astrolabe chamber," Giles replied solemnly. "It's said that the first kings of our land used this device to commune with the stars themselves." As I approached the astrolabe, the crystal's pulsing grew more intense. I reached out, drawn by an impulse I couldn't explain. "I wouldn't touch that if I were you, Lady Blackwood." I whirled around to find Lord Erebus standing in the doorway, his dark eyes glittering in the strange light of the chamber. How long had he been there? "This chamber is forbidden for a reason," he continued, gliding into the room. "The energies here are unstable, especially now with Astria's eye gone dark." I turned back to the astrolabe, my mind racing. "This device, it's connected to the stars somehow, isn't it? To the window in my tower?" Erebus nodded, a hint of approval in his expression. "Very good. Yes, this astrolabe is linked to key points throughout the castle. Your window is one. There are others. But why?" I pressed. "What's the purpose of all this?" "Balance, my dear astronomer. Control." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "The ability to shape destiny itself." A chill ran down my spine at his words. Is that why Astria's eye vanished? Someone used this device to, what? Extinguish a star? Erebus's laugh was hollow. If only it were that simple. No, the star's disappearance is a symptom, not the cause. Something is coming, Lady Blackwood. Something that has slumbered for millennia. Before I could question him further, hurried footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. A guard burst in, his face pale with fear. "My lord! My lady!" he gasped. "It's the king! He's collapsed!" The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Without a word, I raced past the guard, my heart pounding in my ears. I could hear Erebus and Giles behind me, but I paid them no heed. I found Edmund in his private study, surrounded by frantically whispering physicians. When I pushed my way through to his side, my breath caught in my throat. The king's skin was ashen, his breathing shallow. But it was his eyes that truly terrified me. They were completely black, like twin voids, and in their depths, I could have sworn I saw stars swirling. "Harriet," he rasped, his hand groping blindly until I clasped it in my own. "The key! You must—" His words dissolved into a fit of coughing. One of the physicians tried to usher me away, but I stood my ground. "Edmund, what key?" I asked urgently. "What must I do?" His grip on my hand tightened, and for a moment, his eyes cleared. The Edmund I knew, my childhood friend, looked up at me with a mixture of fear and determination. "Trust no one," he whispered. "The fate of the kingdom. It's in your hands now." With a shuddering gasp, he fell back against the pillows, his eyes rolling back in his head. The physicians swarmed around him, and this time, I let myself be pushed aside. As I stumbled out of the room, my mind reeling, I found Lord Erebus waiting in the hallway. His face was impassive, but there was a gleam in his eyes that I didn't like. "Well, Lady Blackwood," he said softly, "it seems the stakes have risen. The king's life now hangs in the balance, along with the fate of the realm. The question is, what will you do about it?" I stared at him, a terrible suspicion forming in my mind. "You know something about this, don't you? About what's happening to Edmund?" His lips curled in a humorless smile. "I know many things, my dear. The real question is, how far are you willing to go to save your king and your kingdom? Some knowledge comes at a great price. Are you prepared to pay it?" As I stood there, caught between my loyalty to Edmund and my growing mistrust of Erebus, I realized I was facing a choice that would change everything. The fate of the kingdom was in my hands, Edmund had said. But what did that mean? And more importantly, what would I have to sacrifice to see this through? The corridor seemed to darken around us, the shadows growing longer. And in that moment, I could have sworn I heard a faint whisper, like the one in my chamber nights ago. "Choose wisely, stargazer. The heavens are watching." I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain. I would not let Edmund down, even if it meant confronting the very stars themselves. "Tell me what I need to know," I said to Erebus, my voice steadier than I felt. "Whatever the price, I'll pay it. For Edmund and for the kingdom." As the words left my lips, I felt a shift in the air, as if the very castle was holding its breath. I had made my choice, for better or worse. Now, I could only hope it was the right one. Little did I know, as Erebus led me back towards the astrolabe chamber, that the true test of my resolve was yet to come. For in Thornhaven Castle, every choice has consequences, and some paths, once taken, can never be undone. This concludes part 3 of the story. We've escalated the conflict by revealing more about the mysterious astrolabe chamber and its connection to the stars. The moral dilemma is introduced with the king's collapse and Harriet's decision to do whatever it takes to save him and the kingdom, even if it means trusting the enigmatic Lord Erebus. The stakes are now higher, with the king's life in danger and hints of a greater threat looming. This sets up the story for the twist and shocking discovery that will come in part 4. The astrolabe chamber seemed different as we re-entered it, the painted stars on the ceiling pulsing with an eerie, lifelike glow. Lord Erebus strode purposefully towards the central device, his dark robes swirling around him like living shadows. "What you're about to learn, Lady Blackwood," he said, his voice unnaturally calm, "will change everything you thought you knew about our world, our history, and your place in it." He placed his hand on the crystal at the heart of the astrolabe, and suddenly the room came alive. The painted stars began to move, swirling around us in a dizzying dance of light and shadow. I felt a tugging sensation, as if my very essence was being pulled towards the vortex of stellar energy. What's happening? I gasped, struggling to maintain my footing as the room spun around us. Erebus's eyes gleamed with an almost manic light. We're piercing the veil, my dear. The barrier between worlds that has stood for millennia is weakening, and we are going to tear it down. Before I could protest, a blinding flash of light erupted from the crystal. When my vision cleared, I found myself standing not in the chamber, but in a vast starlit void. Nebulae swirled around us, galaxies spiraled in the distance, and there, right before us, hung a shimmering curtain of energy that seemed to ripple with every color imaginable. This, Erebus said, gesturing grandly, is the stellar veil, the barrier that has kept our world separate from the realm of the Celestials. My mind reeled, trying to process what I was seeing. Celestials? You mean beings from beyond the stars? He nodded, a savage grin spreading across his face. Gods, some might call them. The beings who shaped our world, who hung the stars in the sky, and who were banished beyond this veil eons ago. As I watched, transfixed, I saw shapes moving behind the veil, vast, incomprehensible forms that hurt my eyes to look at directly. And then, with a jolt of horror, I realized what was happening. The missing star, I breathed. Astria's eye. It wasn't just a star, was it? It was a lock, Erebus finished for me. One of the celestial anchors keeping the veil in place. And now that it's gone? He trailed off, but I could see the consequences unfolding before us. The veil was thinning, tearing in places. And through those tears, I could see impossible things. Cities that defied physics, beings of pure energy, and horrors beyond imagination. We have to stop this, I said, my voice shaking. We have to find a way to repair the veil before… Erebus's laughter cut me off, cold and mirthless. Stop it? My dear Harriet? Why would we want to stop it? This is what I've been working towards for centuries. The realization hit me like a physical blow. You're not human, are you? His form seemed to shimmer, and for a moment, I saw something else beneath the human facade. Something ancient and terrible. Not anymore, he said softly. I was, once. But I saw the truth, Harriet, the power that lies beyond the veil, and I made my choice. The king, I gasped, pieces falling into place. What you did to Edmund, it was to weaken the veil further, wasn't it? Erebus nodded, almost approvingly. Very good. The royal bloodline has always had a connection to the veil. By corrupting Edmund, I've created another tier. Soon the Celestials will return, and this world will be remade in their image. I felt sick, remembering Edmund's black, star-filled eyes. And the astrolabe? The window in my tower? Tools, he said dismissively. Means to an end. Your ancestors built them to monitor the veil, to ensure it remained strong. I've been using them to systematically weaken it instead. My mind raced, searching for a way out of this nightmare. Why tell me all this? Why show me? His expression softened, almost becoming gentle. Because you have a choice to make, Harriet Blackwood. Join me. Embrace the power of the Celestials. Help me usher in a new age for our world. For a moment I was tempted. The secrets of the universe lay before me, power beyond imagining within reach. But then I thought of Edmund, of the terror in his eyes as the starry void consumed him. Never! I spat, backing away from Erebus. I'll find a way to stop you, to save Edmund and seal the veil. His face hardened, all pretense of humanity falling away. Then you will die with the rest of them. The age of mortals is ending, Harriet. The stars are coming home. With a gesture, he sent us hurtling back to the astrolabe chamber. As reality reasserted itself around us, I saw the astrolabe's crystal pulsing faster, brighter. The veil was weakening by the second. I turned to run, to warn someone, anyone. But Erebus was faster. His hand closed around my throat, lifting me off the ground with inhuman strength. I had such hopes for you, he hissed. his eyes now swirling vortexes of starlight. The last Blackwood, the key to it all. But if you won't join us willingly. His other hand pressed against my forehead, and I felt a searing pain as something alien and cold began to seep into my mind. I struggled, fighting against the invasion with every ounce of my will. And then, just as I thought all was lost, I heard it. A whisper, not from Erebus or the invading presence, but from somewhere deep within me. The stars remember Harriet Blackwood, and so must you. In that moment, a flood of memories crashed over me, not just my own, but those of countless generations of Blackwoods before me. I saw the Veil being created, the Celestials being banished. I saw the astrolabe being built, the secret passages of Thornhaven Castle designed to channel and focus stellar energy. And I saw what I had to do. With a surge of strength I didn't know I possessed, I broke free from Erebus's grasp. My hand found the astrolabe's crystal, and I felt power surge through me. Not the cold alien force Erebus wielded, but something warm and familiar. The true power of the stars, passed down through my bloodline. "No!" Erebus roared, lunging for me. But he was too late. Light exploded from the crystal, from my very being. The chamber shook, the castle trembled to its foundations, and as unconsciousness claimed me, I heard the furious screams of Erebus mingling with something else, the sound of the veil knitting itself back together, sealing away the horrors that had nearly broken through. My last thought before darkness took me was of Edmund. I only hoped I wasn't too late to save him, to save us all. As I slipped into oblivion, I could have sworn I heard the stars themselves whispering, "Well done, stargazer, but your journey is far from over." I awoke to the taste of ash and starlight on my tongue. My body ached as if I'd fallen from the highest tower of Thornhaven Castle, and my mind was a maelstrom of memories both ancient and new. As I struggled to sit up, I realized I was no longer in the astrolabe chamber. Instead, I found myself in a small circular room I'd never seen before. The walls were etched with familiar constellations, and in the center stood a pedestal bearing a single, leather-bound book. "The true stellar concordance," I murmured, recognizing it from the flood of ancestral memories. This hidden chamber was the real heart of Thornhaven Castle, a sanctuary known only to the Blackwood line. I reached for the book with trembling hands, but before I could touch it, a voice spoke from the shadows. "Careful, my dear. Some knowledge, once gained, can never be unlearned." I whirled around to see Giles stepping into the light, but it wasn't the Giles I knew. Gone was the stooped posture and weathered face. This Giles stood tall, his eyes gleaming with the same starlight I'd seen in Erebus's. "You're one of them," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "A celestial." He inclined his head, a sad smile playing on his lips. "I am. But unlike Erebus, I chose to remain, to watch over your line and ensure the veil stayed strong." My mind reeled with questions, but one burned brighter than the rest. "Edmund," I said urgently. "Is he—" "Alive," Giles assured me, "but changed. Erebus's influence runs deep, and undoing it will not be easy." I sagged with relief, but the respite was short-lived. "Erebus," I growled. "He's still out there, isn't he?" Giles nodded gravely. "Weakened by your actions, but far from defeated. He will try again, Harriet, and next time, he won't underestimate you." I turned back to the concordance, my resolve hardening. Then I need to be ready. I need to understand what I am, what I can do. "Are you certain?" Giles asked, his voice heavy with warning. "The path of a stargazer is not an easy one. Once you embrace your heritage fully, there's no going back to the life you knew." I thought of Edmund, of the terror in his eyes as the void consumed him. I thought of the kingdom, blissfully unaware of how close they'd come to annihilation. And I thought of Erebus, of the cold hunger in his gaze as he spoke of remaking the world. I'm certain, I said, squaring my shoulders. Whatever the cost, I'll pay it. For Edmund. For the kingdom. For everything. Giles nodded, a mix of pride and sorrow in his eyes. Very well. Take up the concordance, Harriet Blackwood. Claim your birthright. With a deep breath, I grasped the ancient tome. The moment my fingers touched its cover, power surged through me. Stellar energy coursed through my veins, and my mind expanded, touching the vast cosmic web that connected all things. Visions flashed before my eyes. The creation of the Veil, the wars that led to the Celestials' banishment, the generations of Blackwoods who had stood guard against their return. I saw the intricate network of ley lines that crisscrossed the kingdom, focusing on Thornhaven Castle. And I understood, truly understood, the weight of the legacy I now bore. As the visions subsided, I found myself on my knees, gasping for breath. Giles knelt beside me, his hand on my shoulder. What you've experienced is just the beginning, he said softly. The concordance contains the accumulated knowledge of countless stargazers. It will take time to fully comprehend it all. I nodded, still reeling from the influx of cosmic awareness. Time we may not have. Erebus is still out there, and the Veil is weakened, yes, Giles finished, but not beyond repair. Your actions in the astrolabe chamber bought us some time, but a more permanent solution will be needed. I rose to my feet, the concordance clutched to my chest. Then we need to act fast. We need to... My words were cut short by a violent tremor that shook the entire castle. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and I could hear the distant sound of stone cracking. Giles's face paled. He's making his move already. Erebus must be more desperate than we thought. Another tremor, stronger this time. I staggered, nearly dropping the concordance. What's happening? He's trying to force open a tear in the Veil, Giles said grimly. If he succeeds, the barrier between worlds will collapse entirely. My mind raced, drawing on both my own knowledge and the cosmic wisdom newly available to me. The ley lines, I said suddenly. If we can realign them, focus their energy on strengthening the Veil instead of tearing it. Giles nodded, a spark of hope in his eyes. It could work, but it would require immense power, more than either of us possess alone. I thought of Edmund, of the latent celestial energy now coursing through his veins. Not alone, I said. Together. Me, you, and Edmund. The power of the stars, the wisdom of the Celestials, and the authority of the crown. It's dangerous, Giles warned. If we fail, we could tear the Veil ourselves, or worse. Another tremor rocked the castle, and I heard the distant sound of screaming. The choice was clear. We have to try, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. It's our only chance. Giles studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. But remember, Harriet, the power of a stargazer comes at a price. Are you prepared to pay it, whatever it may be? I clutched the concordance tighter, feeling the weight of countless generations on my shoulders. I am, I said softly. For Edmund, for the kingdom, for everything. As we hurried from the hidden chamber, the castle quaking around us, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was marching towards my destiny. Whether that destiny ended in triumph or tragedy remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. By the time this night was over, nothing would ever be the same again. This concludes part 5 of the story. We've explored Harriet's emotional crisis as she grapples with her newfound powers and responsibilities. The stakes have been raised even higher with Erebus's renewed assault on the Veil, and we've set the stage for a climactic confrontation involving Harriet, Giles, and the corrupted King Edmund. The halls of Thornhaven Castle had become a maze of shifting shadows and falling debris. As Giles and I raced towards the king's chambers, I could feel the very fabric of reality straining around us. The veil was tearing, and with each passing moment, the boundary between our world and the realm of the Celestials grew thinner. We burst into Edmund's room to find chaos. The king was writhing on his bed, his body engulfed in swirling patterns of starlight. Around him, reality itself seemed to warp and twist. "Edmund!" I cried, rushing to his side. His eyes snapped open at the sound of my voice, and I saw a glimmer of recognition amidst the cosmic storm raging within them. "Harriet!" he gasped, his voice echoing strangely. "I can feel them. The Celestials. They're coming." Giles joined us, his face grim. "We don't have much time. Erebus is using the king as a conduit to force open the veil." I nodded, my mind racing through the knowledge gifted to me by the Concordance. "We need to redirect the ley lines," I said. "Use their power to reinforce the veil instead of tearing it." "And how do you propose we do that?" Giles asked, even as another violent tremor shook the castle. I took a deep breath, centering myself. The three of us. We form a triad, the Stargazer, the Celestial, and the Monarch. Together, we might have enough power to reshape the ley lines and seal the breach. Edmund's hand grasped mine, surprisingly strong despite his condition. "Whatever it takes," he said, his voice steadier now. "I trust you, Harriet." Giles nodded solemnly. "As do I. Lead the way, Stargazer." With the Concordance clutched to my chest, I closed my eyes and reached out with my newfound senses. I could feel the ley lines crisscrossing beneath the castle, pulsing with ancient power. And there, at their confluence, I sensed a presence that made my blood run cold. "Erebus," I whispered. "He's in the astrolabe chamber." "Then that's where we make our stand," Giles said grimly. Supporting Edmund between us, we made our way through the crumbling castle. As we descended into the lower levels, the air grew thick with otherworldly energy. By the time we reached the chamber, it felt like wading through a sea of starlight. The door to the astrolabe chamber had been blown off its hinges. Inside, we found a scene of cosmic horror. The room had become a swirling vortex of stellar energy, with Erebus at its center. He no longer bothered with his human guise. His form was a writhing mass of darkness and light, tendrils of void reaching towards the tearing veil. As we entered, his attention snapped to us. "Ah, the last players arrive," he said, his voice booming with eldritch power. "Come to witness the rebirth of your world? We've come to stop you," I declared, my voice steadier than I felt. Erebus laughed, the sound sending shivers down my spine. "Stop me? Foolish child, the veil is already tearing. Soon the Celestials will return, and this pitiful realm will be remade in their glory." "Not if we have anything to say about it," Edmund growled, straightening despite his weakness. I squeezed his hand, feeling Giles's reassuring presence on my other side. "Now," I whispered, "focus on the ley lines. Imagine them bending to our will, reinforcing the veil." As one, we reached out with our power. I felt the cosmic energy of the Concordance flow through me, mingling with Edmund's royal authority and Giles's celestial nature. The ley lines responded, their courses slowly shifting. Erebus roared in fury, lashing out with tendrils of void. "You dare interfere? You cannot hope to stand against the will of the Celestials." The battle that followed defied description. Reality itself bent and warped around us as we struggled for control of the ley lines. Erebus's power was immense, fueled by the tearing veil and countless eons of planning. But we had something he didn't: a connection to this world, a reason to fight for its survival. I poured everything I had into the effort, drawing on the strength of every Blackwood who had come before me. I felt Edmund's unwavering resolve, his love for his kingdom giving him strength beyond measure. And Giles, the Celestial who had chosen to protect rather than conquer, his power a beacon in the cosmic storm. Slowly, agonizingly, the tide began to turn. The ley lines pulsed with our combined will, weaving a new pattern across the land. I could feel the veil beginning to stabilize, the tears knitting themselves closed. Erebus's form began to flicker, his connection to our world weakening. "No," he howled. "I will not be denied. Not when I'm so close." With a final, desperate surge of power, he lashed out at us. I saw the tendril of void racing towards Edmund, and without thinking, I threw myself in its path. Pain beyond imagining coursed through me as the void energy made contact. I felt myself being torn apart, my very essence scattered across the cosmos. But in that moment of agony, I also felt something else, a connection to the stars themselves, to the vast, unending cycle of creation and destruction that governed the universe. With the last of my strength, I grabbed hold of that connection and pulled. The power of 1,000 suns flooded through me, and I directed it all towards sealing the veil. There was a blinding flash, a sound like the birth of a galaxy, and then silence. When my vision cleared, I found myself lying on the floor of the astrolabe chamber. The vortex was gone, the room once again solid and real. Edmund and Giles were beside me, battered but alive. And there, in the center of the room, stood the astrolabe. But it was changed now, the crystal at its heart pulsing with a warm, steady light. I knew somehow that it now served as an anchor for the veil, a safeguard against future incursions. "Is it over?" Edmund asked, his voice hoarse. Giles nodded, a look of wonder on his face. "The veil is sealed, stronger than ever before. Erebus is gone, cast back beyond the stars." I tried to sit up, wincing at the movement. Every part of me ached, and I could feel the weight of the power I had channeled settling into my bones. "What now?" I asked. "Now," Giles said softly, "we rebuild, and we remain vigilant. The stars will always be watching, Harriet Blackwood, and so must we." As dawn broke over Thornhaven Castle, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, I stood at my tower window. The familiar constellations were fading with the coming of day, but I could still feel them, a comforting presence at the edge of my awareness. I thought of the challenges that lay ahead, helping Edmund recover, rebuilding the castle, learning to fully control my newfound powers. But I also felt a sense of purpose, a certainty that this was the path I was meant to walk. The fate of the kingdom, perhaps of all worlds, now rested in part on my shoulders. It was a daunting responsibility, but as I gazed at the lightening sky, I knew I was ready to face whatever the cosmos might throw my way. After all, I was Harriet Blackwood, the last of the stargazers, and the stars themselves were my allies. As our tale of cosmic intrigue and stellar magic comes to a close, I can't help but wonder, what would you have done in Harriet's place? Would you have had the courage to face the void, to stand against forces beyond mortal comprehension? If you've enjoyed this journey through the star-studded halls of Thornhaven Castle, I invite you to share your thoughts. What other secrets might be hidden in the celestial tapestry? What adventures await our intrepid stargazer? Remember, dear reader, the stars are always watching. And sometimes, if we listen closely, they whisper their secrets to those brave enough to hear. Until our next cosmic adventure, keep your eyes on the skies and your spirit among the stars.